Siltforge's food problems have been temporarily solved. With Canolaville making produce in Siltforge's food factory up and running, Razin no longer has to worry about his citizens' hunger. Still, there are things to worry about, particularly dehydration. While no beavers have yet succumbed to a lack of water, Sinsel reports that word from upriver confirms that they can only expect droughts and bad tides to get longer and more frequent from here on out. Luckily, the Siltforge Corps of Engineers have a plan, creating a true reservoir upriver for storing water during the wet season, as well as building infrastructure on site to extract and permanently store that water during bad tides. Razin doesn't hesitate to give it his go-ahead, and neither should we. Let's jump straight into making our permanent water system. Hello and welcome back to Siltforge. So today our first project is going to be very simple in theory. We're going to be going up here to this part of the river and we are going to be damming it off to make a reservoir up here. Now the plan is that we should be able to fill up the water up here all the way to the top of where these floodgates are. So that's going to be 3 blocks up to the height of this cliff. Obviously, that is going to present some challenges. First and foremost, we will have to dam off up here, near where these pine trees are. That is just going to be accomplished with levees. We are going to have to come all the way over here to where our water sources are and put some levees over here as well. Because if we don't, the water will just start flowing backwards out of the reservoir. And that obviously is not optimal. And then third, we will need to come up with a solution to allow this to still be our Badwater channel while bad tides are happening, as well as we will need to build a wall on this side of the channel here, because this goes up a block below where this cliff is. So let's get started on all of that. Obviously, the easiest thing to do is going to be to build this wall here. That is just going to be levees. I'm going to make it mirror this cliff, but 1 block away because I think that will look good. So we'll just do that. This will allow a little bit of irrigation for this area down here, though I'm not sure we're going to make good use of it. And then with a path across, we should just be able to have them walk all the way over here and build this first levee to keep water from flowing backward. And now the trick is going to be getting them back across the water here. And I think as opposed to building platforms, I am just going to build them a winding staircase down. And then a staircase back up. And then we will need to pause all these pumps, as always. That is the problem we're trying to solve. And with this planned out over here, all that is left is going to be getting those levees, building those in, and probably giving them a path to work with. And that should keep our water from flowing back over the side again here. Since we are up here and we are going to be using wood for all this, we will also just make sure that we are utilizing this wood up here. And we will get a few lumberjack flags built. And then I also want to build a small industrial pile up here for wood. But this does also create a problem. We don't have haulers. I can't prioritize this with any settings the way it currently sits. So we will need to come over here and we will just need to unlock. Nope, we don't need to unlock it. We just need to build it. It's 20 wood, 20 planks. We will situate that in right here. Make that higher priority. And then of course we need to lower the workplace priority for that, as we always do with builders' huts. Even though that's a hauling post. And we will set that to obtain. We will also build a small warehouse for planks, because I assume we will need a lot of them out here. And also set that to obtain. And then getting over here across this channel is going to be the trick, I think. So we will start just with the platform. But we need to remember to leave space for the actual 2 high dams here. And we're also going to need to unlock some things. So we're going to need to unlock a double platform. And then drag that across. And then we're just going to have them destroy all of these resources over here. We don't really have much of a choice. And then with this, we will build them. Well, first, we'll have to unlock the double floodgate. And we will build, I'll say 4 across. That should be enough to let out enough water during a bad tide. So that should be a large enough gap that we're not keeping water trapped in. And then we will build, levees out to there. And this is a new discovery to me. Much like tree stumps, you can actually build straight through dead bushes. So I think I'm just going to do that. I'll actually unmark all of these resources for demolition. And I will just, instead of bringing these levees in at a direct right angle here, I will just bring them in 1 block back. Like that. And that's going to mean we're storing a little less water, but it shouldn't be the end of the world. And then while they're busy building this dam, there's actually another dam that we're going to need. Because while this will be perfect for storing water, it's not the only issue we face during droughts and bad tides. One other thing that frequently happens, since this is a bad water source, and this dam is holding back our clean water, once this drought ends, the water will begin to flow through here, but the water will also begin to flow out of this bad water source, and that will flow back here to this dam and contaminate a bunch of these mangroves and a bunch of these pine trees. So before this drought even ends, we need to get another dam that crosses this gap, and we need to get that faster than the reservoir. So we are just going to right here, I think. Should just be able to 6 across. Bring that out here. We want to make all of that highest priority. So they should do that before any of this stuff over here. And then since that is all wood, I am also going to do the same thing with the industrial pile. And I'm going to make that logs. And I'm going to make that obtain. I'm going to make that highest priority. And then with all that in place, there's very little left to do now other than wait for it to be built. And also make sure that this water level does not get too low by letting out water occasionally. You know, Timberborn things. And with the end of our drought, we should be able to see what I was talking about in action here with our bad water. So this will start to flow over and flow out. But as we will see, this will actually start to flow backwards towards this part of the river until, currently we've got this open, but until water flows through here, and then it'll flow off the rest of the river the way that it's intended to. So if we did not have this levee and dam system here, it would have just continued to flow back to this dam. So that's why we went ahead and built that. Now, as we can see, they have almost finished these levees back here, and then presumably they will start to work on this bit of the dam, but as we can also see, they ran out of planks in the middle of all of that lack of power. Now this bit will also give us a opportunity to just go ahead and, I think it's rubble. Nope, it's resources. Just delete these blocks here for a little bit more water storage when a drought hits, particularly for the crops over on the Canolaville side. All right. And now with the vast bulk of this dam now in place, I can at the very least raise this up one more height. And then once they actually finish with these levees, I'll be able to do that again. And we will see as water starts to crest up to that 3 spaces high. And as I need to delete these wood and wait for all this to stop flooding. And with that final levee in place, we can just raise this all the way up. We'll do 3.85. We'll watch as that water flows back and fills up this last bit of the reservoir. Not flowing back off, because the only place it could over here is over the water sources, which we know it cannot do. Not flowing off over here, but irrigating some of this land. And at some point soon, hopefully, flowing out of here. There we go. Now, 2.85, it might have some minor cresting issues at the back, but that should be fine. And it is going to temporarily flood like it always loves to do whenever we raise floodgates. But the one other thing I do want to test with this, since we're going to be using this as our Badwater discharge, I just want to make sure that if we lower these gates all the way down, that the water will flow out the way we expect it to without flooding. So we're just going to give this a minute here on 3 times speed. I don't think it's going to drain very quickly, or perhaps at all. Yeah, because it doesn't... Oh, it is draining very slowly out of here. But importantly, this is enough to handle the water that comes in during a bad tide. So that should be all fine and dandy for us. And not cause any issues. But as we know from the intro, simply building a dam up here is not the sole purpose of this project. The other thing we want to do is we want to get rid of these pumps down here, which are currently pumping out of the water that we use to irrigate mostly Canolaville, but a bit of this part of Siltforge. And we want to move those up here, particularly to this deeper part of the river, where they can access more water for a longer amount of time, but also to where they won't be pulling from the water that is supposed to just sit and pool in this reservoir. So deep water pumps will go down, I believe it's up to a depth of 6. We only have a depth of 3. They obviously can't be built in the water, but because they stretch down to a depth of 3, we can actually save quite a few planks by building our infrastructure on this higher up portion of the reservoir rather than building it out over this deep bit. And while I could just have the path go over to some raised deep water pumps over here and build stairs up to each of them, I am not going to do that on the off chance that a beaver in the middle of a bad tide wants to get some water from one of these pumps. It will just run straight through this bad water, and we obviously don't want that. So I am going to get our platforms. And any water pump is going to be a 4x4 building. That'll actually stay, that's fine. So we will just build 4x4 buildings. So then I was worried about this. We need to get rid of this pine tree. So someone please come and do that for me. We will also need platforms in front of all of these. And then we can just connect right up in over here and build that. I want to say service road, which it kind of is, in right there. So then we will just give ourselves 4 deep water pumps here. And because I like to be silly with things, I'm going to flip a couple of these around just for the look, honestly. And then up here on this ridge, we are going to store the water that these pumps are generating. So we're just going to go to storage, and rather than use medium tanks, I am going to take this opportunity to unlock our large tanks because we do have metal stored up and gears. So we're just going to unlock one of these, and I'm just going to place one of these up here. I'm going to make it store water. I'm going to set it to supply, and then these will be set to obtain. I'm realizing I don't have water stored over here. So these beavers should also have access to that. And then with that starting to be built, I think it is time to move on. With the greater Siltforge reservoir and water treatment plant coming along, Rosin gets an unexpected visitor, Canola. They have heard that Rosin intends to start storing immense amounts of water. And since, technically, the reservoir partially lies within Canolaville land, a part of that water should belong to Canola. Rosin is about to reprimand Canola about the borders of his claim until Kenna, the head of the Siltforge Corps of Engineers, barges in, revealing that the plan for permanent water structures was their idea, so that Canolaville can irrigate its crops regardless of the season. Amused by his near overreaction, Rosin gives his blessing for the expansion, allowing Canola their fair share of water. Besides, why not allow Canola a personal project? Rosin has his own to get working on. So we're going to expand Canolaville, which is going to require getting rid of a bunch of these trees. So the grand plan here is going to be to expand Canolaville up onto this ridge. But before we do that, I think we need to take care of a few things in our colony because we have a couple issues popping up here. The biggest one is going to be that we're going to be adding even more jobs over here on Canolaville, and we already have way fewer beavers than we have jobs. We are playing the Iron Teeth, though. This is fairly easy to fix. I'm going to delete one of these small tanks. I'm going to replace it with a breeding pod. I'm not going to face it that way because that would look breeding odd. I'm going to get us another barrack, and I'm going to put it in line with the barracks from before, which will also help us fix the issue of this homeless beaver. And then because we've got our food mostly sorted and we are going to have our water taken care of, I'm going to jump the gun a little bit here, and I'm actually going to build us a second breeding pod, or I guess a 6th breeding pod. Now this should cause our population over time to grow up to about 60 beavers, which is more than we need for the jobs we have and more than we need for the jobs that we will be adding. It is going to put us in a little bit of a strain for resources until this is built. Our food factory should be able to handle it, but I am also going to just preemptively build us another warehouse for corn rations, because that's really going to be our staple food product for a while we build up our industry. And then there's one more thing I do want to take care of. We've got pine trees here. I've actually set these ones to not be cut down anymore because I want to use these pine trees to gather pine resin, because we are fairly close to just being able to build up our industry and get treated planks. So I want to have a bit of a stockpile before we do that. A tapper shack is not that expensive in either science or materials. I'm just going to build that right here. Anyway, I am going to give them some time to get some of that built up before we move on to the Canolaville portion. And the drought has officially hit. I do not think we are going to have a ton of issues here, though. Mainly because we have a boatload of water. And that, in case you are wondering, does mean enough water for a boat to be able to drive. That's not what it means. Also, I'm sneaking a cheeky little second lumber mill back here. Didn't really want to do this, but quite frankly, we are having such an issue with generating planks. We don't have much of a choice. Hey, here's a quick tip. Don't let water out of your dam in the middle of the night, because you might get a boost of power. That's right when the beavers aren't working. Like exactly when the beavers aren't working. Oh my god, that could not have gone worse. And with the drought over and done with, and with the beavers starting to finish up on this project, as well as a lot of the other projects that are around the colony, it's time for us to finally get to expanding Canolaville. So when it comes to water storage, with the reservoir up here, I'm not particularly concerned about this part of our farm ever drying up. What I am concerned about is using all of this area effectively. So we have our farms and we have our lumber mill. All of these have area up here on top of the cliff that they could be utilizing that they are not. And the reason they are not is because this area is not irrigated. But we do have a way to irrigate land all on our own. So while later on in the game, blowing a hole in the ground and filling it with water might be an option, we don't have that luxury right now. We've got to use the resources that are available to us. And so what we currently have are levees. If we build a structure that has a 3x3 square in the middle to hold water, we can irrigate a large area and use that for growing crops. So what I mean, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put some levees down. And we are going to build these in such a way that in the middle of these, we have a 3x3 square. And for something like this, I could have used a smaller area, I could have used a larger area, but a 3x3 is going to be the most compact and efficient way to do this. Going smaller, you will irrigate less land per tile, and going bigger, you won't get any extra benefit out of the amount of tiles that you're using. But then as they finish up with building this, I'm just going to build a staircase up, and then at the top, I'm going to come down to water and I'm going to get a fluid dump and I'm going to build that at the top of the staircase. It's only a few logs and a few planks. And then that will be connected up. I don't know why I've done the paths so weird over here. And then once that is all in place, we should see a beaver come to take this job in the morning. And then they will start to pump water out into this tiny little reservoir we have made, and it will irrigate a large portion of our land. Now that will open up a big solid area for farming, but obviously there's a lot more left over here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to build another one of these. And then for this one, I'm just going to try to get as in the middle of this dried area as I can. So that is going to be one ahead of where that one is, but we'll just have to live with a little bit of imperfection for now. And then we will repeat that same design with the fluid dump. And then each of these fluid dumps is going to take up a job in and of itself. But luckily, we should be able to get rid of 3 jobs back here, because as we can see, all of our deep water pumps up in our reservoir are now pumping up water, which means we can say goodbye to this ugly thing. So I'm just going to take this whole thing, I'm going to demolish buildings, both the water pumps and the stored water, because we can just pick that back up, obviously. And now we have successfully moved our water pumping up to here, where it is much more suited for it. And we once again have beavers sleeping on the ground, so 1 more barrack should suit us perfectly for that. And with that pump finished, our land up here above Canolaville is fully irrigated, which does mean I've got to fill it. So we're going to take this area that the forester can currently access. We're going to plant oak trees. We're just going to do that right there. And that should mirror the area that at least this forester can or lumberjack can access. We will expand foresters and lumberjacks and all of that up here at some point, but for now we're just going to make use with the infrastructure we already have. I am real quick before I forget going to remember to place 2 small water tanks that are set to obtain, so that these fluid dumps should always have some water near them. I'm also, while I'm on the subject, going to build another big old water tank over here. Another drought is approaching, but as we have seen, that should be no trouble with this reservoir system. And then we can stretch all the way over to here for our crops. So I am going to get us a fairly large field of corn going, and I'm actually going to sneak some more in right here, because as I said a bit earlier, that corn ration is going to be our staple food stuff for now until we move to more end-game food production. So having as much of it as we can stuffed in here for now is going to be useful. Now, all that area will likely not stay as corn, because we don't need as much as we have. But having extra corn will obviously serve us well if something bad were to happen. And so we really only have 1 more thing to build this episode. Since next episode, I really want to get serious about our industry. I want to make sure that we are gathering all of the materials that we will need for that now. So the final thing I want to do is I want to get our beavers up here to this ridge and get a Badwater pump going. So just a simple little way up here like that. And then as always, just a Badwater pump. We'll set it there. Connect up. And build a medium tank for Badwater storage. We'll just have that stored up here because currently that'll be the only place that we are gathering it or using it. And we'll figure out where we're storing it down here once we get to that point. So we are officially in a drought, and I'm going to make sure that we have enough water sitting here in our little irrigated area. But other than that, this reservoir should be more than enough to last for our 6-day drought. While I'm at it, actually, and while this drought is still kicking, I could probably have the forester plant some more mangroves over here. That might be a smart idea. And these ones we could cut as opposed to the ones that we gather. Now, as I go back here to adjust this dam, once again, letting water out, I can foresee a bit of a question, which is why have I used 3 high dams here as opposed to sluices? Because if I used sluices, I could just automate the water being let out here. And the whole reason for that is because of this tiny little ridge right here. So if I wanted these sluices to keep this downstream bit level, I can't have this dip because these sluices that are up here on these 4 spaces wouldn't be able to see how deep this water is. So these sluices wouldn't know whether to remain open or closed. And I could build 4 sluices here and then 2 here, but that would be odd looking. So I'm not going to do that. And our drought has ended. We shall open that back up. As we can see, we did not get anywhere near the depths of this reservoir, which means that our current water system should be far more than enough for what we need at the moment, though expect that to change at some point. And with the finishing touches being added to our medium Badwater tank, I think that is where I'm going to call today's episode. A lot has happened in a mere 4 episode span. If you remember, this is what Siltforge looked like at the end of the first episode, and this is of course what it looks like now. Just almost a wholly different landscape to this colony at this point. So if you have enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, maybe also join my Discord. It's kind of in its early stages right now. I don't know what more I'm going to use it for other than making announcements about this channel, but I'm sure things will come up as time goes on. Please remember, if you think anything I did in this episode was insane or stupid, to leave a comment telling me all of your mean thoughts down below. For real though, I do appreciate anyone who has tried to give me any advice since the beginning of this series, or the Timberborn Beginner Survival Guide. I do read all the comments, and I do take them seriously. As always, thank you so much for watching. You could have done literally anything with the last 30 minutes to hour of your life, and you decided to spend it watching me make some beavers, do some things in a video game. So I do genuinely appreciate it. As I say at the end of every episode, Siltforge presses forward, and standing near his Badwater pump, Rosin admires just how far Siltforge has come in such a short amount of time. Surely they are now primed and ready for the industrial expansion he built this city for. But far below, outside the eyes of the founders of Siltforge, dissent is starting to foment.